1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. As we start Nightmare November, and welcome to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
This is Billy. You've heard on Elf on a Shelf, Snoop on a Stoop. Now we got Depp on a Step. He's here to protect you from Freddy.
And my name is Josh, and all I gotta say is screw your hall pass.
Nobody needs a damn hall pass.
We are flying a bit solo here tonight, a little bit empty, but it's okay because they're off to Never Never Land as they have been taken away by Fred Krueger.
Yeah, we tried to keep them awake. Those two slackers decided they had to sleep tonight, so I couldn't wake them up. They're having fun with Freddy, so just watch out for the knives.
We were talking about the 1984 version, just for clarification. We are starting at the OG, the very beginning, the Wes Craven masterpiece. And let's start at the top with this. Billy, what is your relationship to this franchise overall?
So, I mean, I probably mentioned this before, but my grandmother had like a whole VHS section in her house. And this is one of the series that she had that we would watch and repeat. Like, we watched it so much the VHS tape was going bad. So this is like one of my favorites. Of course, I like, Friday the 13th and Chucky as being the ultimate favorite for me. But that's how I relate to this, dude. This is one of those I watched with my cousins and everybody at my grandmother's house constantly. She had nothing but basically horror movies.
I didn't see this movie until I was well into adulthood, and by then, this guy, Michael Myers, had already made an impression on me and had never really left. And then it was Saw kind of came in, and then it was Scream, Ghostface that had kind of come in, and like these other icons that kind of left their mark on me as an individual. And it wasn't probably until I was like early 20s that I'd actually had sat down and watched these movies, like back when Netflix was still doing like the mailers, like where you could like mail in the DVDs. I had a subscription, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna start going through these movies. And I really loved these movies. I went through them a few years ago. First time I went through them, I had various low points in this. Like, obviously, originally the second one was a low point for me. 4 and 5 were low points. I always had a soft spot for 6. And I went back a few years ago, probably 22, and rewatched this series and like really fell in love with it. So I'm a very late bloomer to the Fred Krueger franchise.
Yeah, no, I mean, you started it with what I used to do in the hallway, the whole saying of 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. That was one of the things that always stuck to me, that I'd walk around saying sometimes just for no reason at all. So it's one of those series I love. I love the fact of how they did the makeup and everything for him to make him look like he's burned. As you know, I just bought the Blu-ray version, and I was watching some of the extra commentary on how they did that. And it's crazy that the budget that they had wasn't outrageous for the time, and they were able to pull this off.
What I think is incredible about this movie is, I don't know how much you or the listeners actually, or viewers now, actually are aware of the fact of really just how hard this movie was to kind of get off the ground being made. Wes Craven at this point in his career had done Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes, and like a few other films, and he had pitched this idea basically out of like a story that he had read about people dying in their sleep in Japan. Like, Freddy is based loosely on like like a true story, which I think a lot of people either don't know or overlook, which I think is
Yeah.
fascinating. But he had taken this movie to all of the major studios multiple times. And when you hear the term from New Line Cinema, the house that Freddy built, this is quite literally the reason that New Line is as big as it is today, is because of this singular film. And Wes Craven had essentially taken this film to multiple studios multiple times, and they each said no. And then finally, New Line, which at the time, if I remember correctly, was actually just a distribution.
It was just starting.
It
Yeah.
was just starting, but basically what they were doing at that time was they were the equivalent of something like Arrow Video or I'm trying to think of like other boutique labels. But essentially they would get movies or licenses from like other properties, and they would be the one to release them. That was kind of the equivalent of what they did when they started up. Kind of think almost like Nintendo and playing cards and their origin stories. This was the first movie that they ever produced, and I think they had a budget of like $1 million, and this movie just went gangbusters.
Yeah, I mean, and I forget who it was that believed in him, but he's like, I want this movie, and it was in New Line, and it took them a while to try to get other people to sign on to get the money. They kept having to push back, and then at a certain point where they were low on money, there were people that were inside that's doing the movie that maxed out their own credit cards to pay some of the other people
Yep.
to actually get this movie off the ground.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple of times that were like so Bob Shea was the head of New Line at the time.
Yeah, that's what it
And
was.
and Bob Shea had also had his own kind of take on the way this movie should be in certain scenes. And so the scene where you see Nancy kind of trying to climb up the steps and it almost turns to melted marshmallow, that is a Bob Shea scene. Now I don't know if it was Bob Shea or the casting director on this movie that got Lynn Shea, Bob's sister in this, she's also horror royalty. Most people would know her from the Insidious movies.
Mm-hmm.
I truly love this movie. I think this is not my favorite film in this franchise. We will not be getting to that film for a very long time. But I think this is one of the most innovative slashers that we had. And there's a reason that when you look at Wes Craven's career, many people will argue that he had reinvented the genre multiple times, with The Last House on the Left being one of them, this being another one, and then reinventing the slasher genre with Scream 12 years after this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy that Robert Englund, on one of the things I watched on the commentary, is how he kind of picked other things up from other movies to actually do what he does for Freddy. Like, for instance, he said that he loved Nosferatu, that he took some of it from there, kind of like the Hunchback and everything, and then some of the gangster part from another movie to kind of make Freddy feel more towards that genre.
It's also wild for me to think about how this little movie that like nobody fucking believed in like ended up launching the careers of Robert Englund, Heather Langenkamp, and Johnny Depp. I mean, Johnny Depp only got this movie because it came down to him and somebody else,
To
and
other people.
yeah, two other people. And the only reason that he got it was because Wes Craven's daughter thought
Yeah.
odd.
So yeah, I mean, the fact that Johnny Depp was cast because his daughter thought she was cute, like we were saying, is he was on she's on great company. Look at what he went on to do. I mean, look at, even today he's still getting casted for movies years and years later, and he's still one of the stars in the box office. So
I love Johnny Depp as an actor, and even the fact that he comes back in Freddy's Dead, I think is incredible, because I feel like by the time that movie came out, he was kind of kind of really wasn't at his peak yet, but like also never really kind of denied where he came from. That's always been something that like I was like really humble about with him. Um, because he is, you know, at every point, like he could have said no, right? Like he could have just been the guy that uh
Yeah, when he blew up, he could have been the guy that's like, look, I'm too big for this now. I want to move on. Versus him saying, look, this is my roots and where I started. Let me continue with it. So, I mean, I have a lot of respect for him for that because there are some people that would have been, hey, you know, I did the movie. I'm done. I've gone on to like do all these other things and I don't want to go backwards.
yeah.
Which to me, this movie wouldn't be backwards, but at the time, you know, they didn't really know what they had.
I think this movie also like we have to also consider the fact that this movie comes 10 years after Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 10 years after Black Christmas, 4 years after Nightmare on Elm Street, and 6 years after Halloween. Right? Like this movie by that point had slashers had become very formulaic. I mean, there are so many other slashers that came out around that time we're not even talking about because like that's how big slashers had gotten. And
Mhm.
along comes a guy that essentially has a ugly sweater, as Kelly Rowland would refer to him, and as in Freddy versus Jason. The
Yeah,
reason being is because like those shades of red and green, I think Wes Craven said that like science had like basically stated that
it was it was harder for the eyes to
yeah,
adjust to or something to that.
yeah. And like I think that's like bonkers that there's so much like my like minute details that like went into the planning of Freddy that we don't really kind of consider or we take for granted. But this movie, I would argue, really reinvented the slasher franchise because by the time you get to uh we're a few years away from Halloween 4. By this point, Halloween 2 had been out for 2 or 3 years. Jason was kind of coming yearly, and it was, again, it was very formulaic. It was going to go to Camp Crystal Lake, going to be super boring, and the teenagers are going to have sex. They're going to be hunted down by Jason. Like, that was kind of the formula for that.
Right.
And I think that was kind of that is really one of the hardest things to consider was when it comes to those other slashers, you can literally run and hide anywhere within that vicinity, and they may or may not catch you. But everyone has to fall asleep, and everyone has to dream, and that's what makes Freddy one of the most terrifying villains of all time.
Yeah, and the fact that they were all dreaming about the same person makes it even more terrifying that like a group of people that have never seen, as we find later in the movie that the parents killed, are all dreaming about the same guy. It's crazy that they start comparing and see that, oh, well, we're dreaming about this one guy with knives with a sweater and a hat. And then she turns around and pulls the hat out of her dream. That's when it hit home for me, is when she's pulled the hat out versus just the claws and everything of on the chest.
I think one of the most fascinating things about this movie that a lot of people we don't talk about is Freddy is yes, Freddy is one of the worst kinds of human beings. When you watch the
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called Nightmares in Red, White, and Blue. I don't know. They did this like I don't remember what it's called, but they did this documentary that was like fully like in depth documentary on the series. It's called Never Sleep Again. That's what it's called. I don't know where Red, White, and Blue came from. But the Never Sleep Again documentary talks about how originally the conceptual was that they were going to make Freddy a child molester and murderer. At that time, you had the satanic panic, so that was the reason why he ended up being a child murderer. And the reason why they were even going to do that in the first place was Craven was trying to present one of the worst types of humans that anyone can imagine. And anytime you involve anything with children, that is an immediate red flag. Like
Right.
children is kind of like the no-go areas. Like that's why they say that kids don't often die in horror movies movies. That is also the reason why when you make, I think about Children of the Damned, when you make children the central point, or Children of the Corn, or The Omen, or The Exorcist, when you make children the central focal point of a horror movie, it really fucks with the audience. And the fact that here, I think this one of the things that kind of, I guess maybe doesn't necessarily get overlooked, but I feel like it gets talked about nearly enough, is the fact that Freddy is literally the personification of the sins of the father, or the sin
Right.
of the previous generation. Because there's a scene in this movie where Nancy essentially finds out that, like, oh, my mom knew, and like all of these people, they knew that Freddy was a bad guy, and they knew what he did, and so instead of telling the police, they went out and basically murdered him. And
Right.
now he's kind of come back to um, be this generation's killer. And again, it kind of has this moment where it's like, you are the absolute commander of your destiny, right? Like there are things and habits that I've noticed since I've been going to therapy that are not great, that I got where I picked up from my parents over the years. And I'm starting to recognize those now. And I think that we oftentimes can really undermine how much the environment that we are raised in has an effect on our mental health, and ultimately has an effect on how we view the world, how we formulate opinions, and ultimately how we see life in general.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. And it doesn't even have to be family. It could be just things and traumas you've gone through on your own, just growing up. Or it could be, like, for instance, the whole thing about Freddy, and where I think it was where Freddy got his name, if I remember correctly, was because of a bully to Wes Craven. That's where he came up with some of it. Um, he actually mentioned that the bully was a childhood bully, was the character's menacing personality. I mean, and just imagine that bully now. If everybody, whoever knows him, he's Freddy Krueger. It's crazy, but yeah, I mean, it could be anything in life that could cause different things, and everybody's going to react different to different things. Like either you can be positive or negative, and yeah, it's always been crazy to see that. And people can have like depression of not sleeping or anything else like that, which would build on to what was the main character's name? What her name? I can't think of it. Not Tina, the other one.
Nancy.
Nancy. Thank you. Nancy, as you can see, starts getting sleep deprived from keeping herself awake to try not to go into sleep. And that starts playing with her mind also, just as bad as sleeping and seeing Freddy. So it's a catch 22.
I think also too, we talked about like Nancy. Nancy is definitely this, like, we definitely see her kind of be this heroine, kind of echoing throughout the franchise. And I love that there is this effect for her that we get to see her again in 3 and New Nightmare. And we really kind of get to see how this character grows, and how they are really unique and amongst like the other final girls, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's also kind of, I think she also kind of feels like this telling tale, right? Where it's, she's kind of telling these stories, and like every adult around her is saying like, no, you're just dreaming, it's only asleep. And I think when it comes to teenagers, we also kind of just do that in general when it comes to mental health. I remember um, early on when we were doing victims, we were trying to set up more events and kind of run our own things with kind of alongside of conventions. And a lot of the people we had been approaching had kind of basically had stated that they didn't, if we did anything with them, it was going to be subjugated and basically set to like teenagers. because suicide can only affect teenagers. And
Right.
that's not the case. I think a lot of times when you look at it, honestly, the demographic that hits it the most is middle-aged men, 55 years. That is kind of the primary demographic for where suicide hits the most. At least the most recent kind of set of statistics. That's what they teach us. And I think one of the things that's really impressive about this movie and kind of very telling about this movie is that we treat this thing exactly the same. Is that if sure, Freddy's a made up character, but like if there is someone that is telling you something and they're clearly not okay, understand the warning signs of depression, understand the warning signs of anxiety, understand the warning signs that affect people's mental health, whether it is something like the things that Nancy and Tina and a lot of the other people in this movie talk about, or it is something more serious like suicide and depression.
Yeah, I mean, and since this movie's come out, suicide and everything's, to me, it seems like it's become more known and prevalent. And like you said, it's not just teenagers. It and money being short for a lot of people drives people more towards this because they don't feel like they have another way to get around it or another outreach, even though that there are things out there to help. When you hit a certain point in your mind or a certain mindset that you're either tired of asking for help or you get denied or everything, you feel like nobody cares. And that's when the mindset goes to, why should I live? And I just want people out there to know that there's always a reason.
I will also flip it on you as well. From someone that has, even as recently as this year, struggled with suicidal thoughts and
Hmm.
heavy depression, is that depression has this way of kind of, while I agree with everything you just said, depression also feeds into that. Because depression gives you these almost like these blinders or this mask that basically says, you're not enough. You'll never
Yeah.
be. Why should you care? And don't talk about it. Don't talk about what you're feeling because no one's going to understand. No one's going to think that you're worthy, or how could you ever be loved, or just a number of these different, very heavy themes, right? And and depression is full of shit. Like
Hmm.
not saying like people that suffer with depression are full of shit, but like clarifying and basically saying like depression and like its effect that it has on our mental health and how it makes us see ourselves full of shit. Because depression at the end of the day is a goddamn lie. And I don't care what anyone else says. I know from my experience that it has always been the case where it's like, this doesn't sound like me. These sound like the intrusive thoughts that probably should not be letting win. And the longer those thoughts kind of sit in fester, the easily they are to become essentially suicidal thoughts.
Right. And I mean, you're a witness to this. When you first met me, I was in a type of depression. I was, and you know this, that I mean, I kept to myself. I was a robot. I only did what I had to do. I didn't let the extreme thoughts hit, but I still had the blinders on. The like, I don't deserve, or I don't. Nobody likes me like that, or nobody's ever going to love me like she used to. Or I mean, I had the kids, but it's still different. It was. I still had that thought of, I've got the kids. That's all I'm ever going to have. That's it. Where it's things have changed now, but like you said, you can have blinders on, and if you don't feel your self-worth, it just makes you go into a deeper hole, deeper depression.
Absolutely.
And having friends there helps. You still got to realize yourself how much you're worth, but having the friends there, having somebody to try to help you through it helps a lot.
Community is so vital for mental health. I remember we went and did a show in Asheville, North Carolina, back in August with artists like Ashwords, and we were on the tour with them for the Bear the Anxiety tour. And there was a guy from the guitarist from the band Old Dead Gods, I do not remember his name, but he got up after I got done speaking and talking about the importance of community on your mental health and how vital it can be. And he basically got up and said, a year ago, I was suicidal. And I joined this band, and it helped me come out of my shell. It really created a safe space where like I could talk about these things and could share these things and not feel judged. And community, these are some of my best friends, and community has helped me really stay in focus for that. And I think the thing that doesn't community is great.
Mm-hmm.
Community is helpful. If it wasn't for friends like you, and if it wasn't for a few select other people, I would not be able today. This year has been one of the most trying years, and I am kind of tired of beating around it. I want people to know that shit got dark,
Mm-hmm.
and it got real dark. Billy, I
I
mean,
know.
you know it firsthand.
I know. I'm
There's some of
saying
our
I can.
conversations.
I want you to tell the people when I say I know. I actually know. I'm not just saying that. I actually know.
Um, and when we talk about that type of stuff, community is great, but if you don't actually have a community that you can turn to and that will get in the depths with you, that's not real community, and that's not going to be a very valuable resource for you. And two, the other thing is that community only works to be allowed to win. If you surround yourself with people just to feel validated or admired or loved or whatever type of emotion you wish to feel put in that sentence, doesn't that's not authentic community, because community is something that someone that sticks with you through the hardship and gets down deep inside.
So I mean, I want to clarify what, at least for me, what the word community means to me. So community doesn't mean I'm going to go to a meeting and have a bunch of random people talk to me, because that doesn't work for me. I don't want people to just say, I get it, I understand, I whatever. I want somebody that actually knows me. So community could be something like me and you, like the podcast, or it could be like the people in the band. It could be as simple as going on a video game and you play with these same people every night and you bitch about whatever you want to. That could be your community. Everybody's got their own community, own type.
Yeah.
It's you have to find what's good for you. Whatever helps you the most is that's your community. And I just want to make sure that that's clear, that everybody's community can be different.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
and even if you can't find your community, you can reach out to us. I'm always happy to talk to somebody if that's like that. If I'll listen, as you know, I'll just sit there and listen if that's what somebody wants. I've done that for you. I've done that for Mark. I mean, I'm always there. So never feel like you're alone. Is my point.
Can confirm. Billy has been crucial in the last year, as has Mark and Brandon and a select group of people, partner especially. Um, and one of those things that I think we don't really again talk about is that community does, like you're right, like it means different things for different people. And that's kind of one of those things that like I won't say I recently learned, but like I think community looks different for different people. So like while I've never been a guy that like goes online to play video games and like talk with people in Sweden or Germany, Australia, Louisiana, I don't know, I'm just throwing out
I
random
have.
states. Um, that's never been like my cup of tea. That's never been a community thing that's worked for me. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, like I felt connected with people that are at conventions, at shows, at concerts, at the movies. Like those are types of things that like I'm just kind of really don't give any fucks about and kind of just embrace it. Like, I mean, community literally can start with something as simple as going up to someone who's being, I like your shirt. Like, what's your favorite song by this band? Or what's your favorite like, what's your favorite part of this movie? Or I love the anime. Like, what's your favorite episode of this anime? Or like, let's talk about the mythology. Like, or video games. Like what do you like to do? Like, or books. Like, tell me about your favorite Ray Bradbury book. Or like, what's your favorite take on the Wizard of Oz? Like, there's so
Right.
many different things that you can like. Communities are so versatile. It can be so many different things. And I think that's one of those most important things to think about is that it's going to look different for literally every person.
And you don't have to be part of one community. It could be that one community helps you in one way where you've got other people that you talk to that understand you for a different reason, that help you for different reasons. It's not always like what the mind or what a lot of people believe is you have one community and that's it. It could be that you have different people to talk about different things. And sometimes that's what it takes. It could be, okay, this person understands like when I'm talking about video games, where me and you talk about horror movies and everything else. Then you have an anime community or D&D community. Everybody can have more than one. It doesn't have to be just one community and that's it.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I think I'm pretty versatile in terms of like I'm not trying to brag on myself, but like
Hmm.
there are definitely different communities that I think bring different things, right? Where like me and you, we bonded over life and horror movies. Mark and I bonded over food and horror movies. Brandon and I have gone over so many different things, whether that has been music or religion or uh, life or sports or just a number of different
Yeah.
movies. Like, and like I think that's something that like I'm starting to just kind of see that like community isn't this like one size fits all type of thing. Is like you can have different communities, and they're going to be great, and they're going to be there for your mental health. Because I think sometimes what we think about hope is that hope is this one size fits all thing that it's going to come in the most logical way possible, and oftentimes the thing that is going to be the greatest advantage for your mental health is going to come from, at least in my experience, is going to come from the most unexpected of places.
Yeah.
Like when we started, like when we became friends, and when you were a guest in the podcast, like I never ever would have guessed 3 years later that our story would end the way that it would. Or when Brandon and I met while I was on tour, I never would have imagined that we would have gone through all of this shit that we've gone through. And I think about that too with like Mark and my partner and like a few other people. Like I never really would have been at a place where it's like hope doesn't always feel logical in situations. And sometimes it's embracing the illogical or the weird or the strange that really do mean the matter in that world.
Yeah. I mean, like you said a few minutes ago, if you could find community just by walking up and talking to somebody, hey, I like your shirt, or I like I like that song that you're listening to, that and bond over something simple. And it could go from that one thing to something that's like humongous. Then there's sometimes where the community may change or you may change. For instance, you go through something where you've had somebody in your life forever, it feels like, and then something happens and you just dwindle apart. Sometimes it's phases. That's what I've come to believe, that sometimes some friends or some people that you hang out could be like different phases in your life to where they could come back, but it may not be the community you need right now. And that's something I've learned over the years, because I've got friends that I don't talk to every day, but like I talk to you every day, every couple of hours. But I've got other friends that, like some friends from high school and all that, I don't talk to all the time, but I guarantee if I like reached out to them, you know, or I've got a friend that we'll just send random message to each other like, hey, I need this. Can you help me with this? And they're like, all right, let's go. It's like, where are we hiding the body? So community and time could be, it doesn't have to be linear, is my point.
First off, the most valuable thing, a resource that a person has is there. Second off, before I get serious again,
Yeah.
let me, as the founder of Victims and Villains, make this crystal clear with listeners and viewers. We at Abyss Gazing or any other podcast or productions associated with the Victims and Villains embrace the idea of hiding the body. That is not something that we ever do, especially especially if you're Rod. Nope, nope, nope.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've watched enough TikToks to know the tricks, but no, I'm not saying that's I'm going to go hide the body, but I'm not saying I won't.
But I think you're right. Like I think you're onto something. That, like time isn't linear, and like one of the things that I've learned this year is that even for the people that you think, or you think that like maybe you're drifting away, maybe they're in your life for a season, maybe they're not. Um, those that are in and out of your lives, like they're gonna be in there for a specific purpose. But there's a thing that happens right as people enter into your life where there is a moment where things change, and when those things change, sometimes that's for the good, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes those that stay with us and our rider dies, like that is completely okay as well. And those are the relationships that like I hold so near and dear. Like if there's anything that I've learned in the last couple of years is that community is so important. Community is something that is going to have this tremendous effect on your mental health. I would not be here if it wasn't for that. And I value those relationships. And there are definitely times where like I feel like I take them for granted, or I only prioritize them when it's convenient for me. And that is something that I have worked through a lot in the last year, and I've made a lot of amends with a lot of friends and a lot of people in my life. And so I say that as a cautionary and warning sign, is that community is this, while it is very beneficial for yours, other people need what you have to offer, and be patient and embrace that.
Yeah, I mean, I get the taking for granted and everything. I've done it and I've experienced it. I mean, but there are some communities, friendships to where you may feel like that, but the other person may not. It may be that, okay, this is your time to lean on me. You're going to be there. I know you'll be there for me to lean on you. And even though that may feel like you're taking them for granted, it may be that's your time of need. That's what you need
Yeah.
versus what they need. And anybody that cares or you're connected to like that, they already know. It doesn't come across as being needy or being, hey, I don't care about you right now. It's more of a, if they know you and they can see, they'll know, all right, this is the time I'm taking a step back and just being there for them. That's a huge thing for community. And if you're in the right community, people can see that and they know that helps you the most.
One of the things that I think always has stuck with me about Nightmare on Elm Street is the scene with Rod in particular, is because Rod, the actor that plays Rod, whose name I do off the top of my head, actually talked about in the um, Never Sleep Again documentary, where the scene where he gets uh, in the prison cell and like he's crying, like those are authentic tears. He had hit one of the lowest points of his life and had hit like one of the heaviest seasons of depression he'd ever faced at during uh at that point in his life. He talks about, and that basically was like had meant that, like, I think at the time like his was like a significant other had recently like just either cheated on him or like had left him. He lost his job. He was like getting ready to lose his like car and his home. Like, I mean, it just like shit was just like very real for that guy.
Right.
And so you hear so much of it, you see a lot of those authentic, cathartic feelings throughout the course of that scene. And the reason that I bring that up is because like that's again, those are the moments that those are the things that community allows for us, right? This community allows
Mhm.
us those vulnerable spaces to be very real with people and to embrace others and embrace what it takes and what it costs to actually be um, true to ourselves and true to the person that we want to be.
Yeah. So I believe his name was, I don't know if it's Jesus or Jesus Garcia is his real name, and he was credited as Nick Corey. Just because I looked it up real quick because it was bugging me.
Thanks,
But
Corey.
yeah, it's one of those I can't leave it. It's bugging me. But yeah, I mean, some of the things like the commentaries, like I said, that I watched, they explained how doing this movie together and how banding together just to get it done was like their own community. They were leaning on each other for a lot of stuff, and it's crazy. Like I said, you can find community anywhere if it's the right one.
I think it's one of the things that I've really valued about. I'm going to give a shout out real quick to our friends over at Local 99. They are some filmmakers that we recently had the privilege of screening their film Hell Squad 2 Fresh Meat, and
Mhm.
also had them on the podcast over the summer. And I've seen them, and like I've talked to them like, off and on several times since Horrific Hope, and they're just genuine people. And I never would have thought that. Like, I think about how that community like started out, like where I randomly came across their Kickstarter flyer in a venue, like a dive bar of all places in their hometown when I was on tour with our bros over in Delinda. And we just reached out by happenstance on Instagram and said, "Hey, my name is Josh. I run this film festival. I saw this flyer. Would love to have you guys at the film festival next year. Here's the submission." And just kind of getting to know them over the last year has been a real treat. But again, community happens in places that are just so least expected and things that you just never know. And the DIY filmmaking scene, I think, in particular, with what you're talking about, the making of
Yeah.
Man on Elm Street is a prime example of that because Wes Craven was not the Wes Craven that we know him as today.
Mhm.
He was not the revered man that the genre has made him out to be. Johnny Depp was not this massive star that he would go on to be. I think about Bob Saxon, who's also in this movie, also in Christmas the year before, or 10 years, literally a decade before, world renowned star um, in this movie. Then you had other performers like Robert Englund hadn't been like the horror icon that he was, and a number of other things. And like I think there's I say all that to say that like magic just happens when you kind of just work together and stuff, right?
Okay. I mean, and you brought up Horrific Hope. That this is the first one I actually did, and I actually worked with you on it. I was there in Winchester, and just talking to all the different directors and everything, and then watching them as they were talking to each other and started like the community itself there started like, hey, if you need help with this, I can help you do this. And hey, I know how to do this if you don't. So let me give you ideas and pointers on how to fix this versus how a lot of films and the bigger industry is like, no, we're not going to help each other. You can see there that everybody wants to help each other. Everybody is in it for the love of it versus the money. So that's something I learned from Horrific Hope.
Oh, yeah. Everyone is like, especially I feel like after we screened Peter Noster,
Yeah.
right? Like sitting around and just conversating and like being in the thick of all of these filmmakers and talking about other projects that they've seen throughout the events of Horrific Hope, and just like that's the vision I've always had for Vikings and Games, right? And that's always the thing that I love about doing events like Horrific Hope or going on the road with bands or doing cons, and especially now, like dating a cosplayer is giving me a new appreciation for the convention circuit, where it's like I see firsthand how hard someone works on a cosplay, and then just literally going to a convention this past weekend and seeing firsthand all of the amazing cosplays that I got to see. Um, whether that was some guy that had like this like inflatable Godzilla suit, but like the head was like this like hard plastic, and it also had this like built-in component that would play sound effects that would emulate like his roars, and like the sound of like city destruction was just freaking incredible. And even like the cosplays that like of things, whether it's video games or animes or even just general pop culture stuff, that like I didn't know. Like I was like still like would stop and talk and like ask people and be like, "Hey, what's this about?" Like I was very enthusiastic. I saw a "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia" cosplayer this weekend, and it blew me away. And it's such a simple thing, like it's just one of those moments that, like, again, it's just stopping and being sincere with people and really understanding that community starts with one thing. That's it.
I mean, it was what, a couple months ago or whatever that we went to Maryland, me, you, and your partner, and you had stepped away. I was there with her, and the person that actually did the marshmallow guy from Ghostbusters was there, and she was just talking to him about the costume and how he made it and everything, and versus somebody coming up asking for an autograph and all, he was so in tune to sitting there talking to her, describing her, and asking her, "Hey, well, how do you do yours and everything?" That kind of made, to me, it looked like he lit up, because it wasn't the standard communication of, "Oh, I love you in this movie." It's more of a, "Hey, I've always admired you. How did you do this?" And even that little bit of a interaction of me watching it, because I've never been on that side of it. I've always seen the costumes after they're made, even from what you're describing. So I never realized how much of a community that was. They didn't even know, he didn't even know who she was, and it seemed like they bonded over that one little thing.
Yeah, it's really just great. Like it works together so much, and I want to get back to Elm Street.
Yeah,
because I feel like, not that community is not an important topic to talk about, but I mean, this is one of those landmark films that I want to make sure that we also do it justice.
I agree.
And I think just one of those things that this film is just really known for is just how fucking creepy it is. And
Dude, some of the special effects, the way that they did it was crazy. Like, uh, I watched how they did the one of the early scenes with Freddy, how with the face to come off and everything, where they had the model or the mold, and then they used like a jelly and put the face over it. So when she grabbed it, it just slid off. And the way that effect worked was perfect. I mean, that's like one of the creepiest scenes ever. And to me, that's where it started. I mean, people have expanded from it now, but I mean, that was early on. I don't know of a lot of people that have done that at that point.
I think one of my favorite things that I love in particular about this scene is like particular about this movie is just the practical effects. And again,
Yeah,
like this movie has always been like one of the best genre films we've ever seen. But like watching Never Sleep Again in conjunction a few years ago with this series like gave me a definitively like more just beautiful appreciation for this movie, because like I think about the like that opening scene with Tina and like Freddy's arms kind of just
yeah.
wide, and like how they made that effect. I think about the intricate details that Wes Craven brings to the designs of Freddy Krueger and the mythology of him.
And correct me if I'm wrong, like some of it, like one of the walls was actually, they went and they were trying to figure out how they were going to get like Freddy's face to come through the ceiling, and it was spandex, was it not? And that,
Is this spandex or
or
nylon?
I thought they said spandex on the commentary. I may be wrong, but I thought they said spandex. But this was like early on still of, spandex was out, but I don't think anybody ever thought about just putting it up there to push their face and arms through it. And the effect is so simple, but it hits just right.
I think one of my favorite effects in this movie is the death of the Glenn in this movie, because it's such an intricate thing when you think about, like, logistically, blood shooting straight up like that does not just happen. Like, they basically had to like build this like stage, which would be like a replica of Depp's room,
Right.
and it was like on this like it's on this thing that would like tilt everything, and they basically shot that entire scene upside down so that they could get it, so that they could get the to hit it just right. But the complexities of that scene and just in general, I think, showcase the artistry of Wes Craven as a horror visionary.
They did the same thing with Tina's death also. They built a room and they had everything basically nailed down except a couple of things that they wanted to move. And they had the one that played Rod a certain way. I forgot how they said they had him still, but they literally moved the room. They showed on the commentary the outside of the room, and it was crazy that the contraption they built just to make the room go in a circle and to get that scene to go the way it did.
Well, that's the thing about like low budgets, is that you get like really creative on it. Like, I remember Ryan Reynolds doing an interview about Deadpool, and
Right.
originally Fox originally was gonna give the filmmakers a $90 million budget, and then they brought it down to $55 million. And Ryan basically was like, like, we're gonna make it work. It's gonna
Yeah.
be great, and it's gonna be awesome, and it'll be fine. And I just remember him like talking about that, and like, he's like, we get more creative and stuff like that. And that's the more that I've gotten into the world of DIY filmmaking or low budget filmmaking, the more that, like, I've had like such respect for people that have do this as a hobby, and just seeing the creative things that they come up with. Like, I think about all of the amazing submissions we've gotten over the years at
Yeah.
Horrific Hope, and the films we've been lucky enough to program and reprogram for things like Winter Horrorland and all of these other things. Like, I think it's just really, really incredible what we've been able to see so far.
Yeah. I mean, I know the world, a lot of it's gone like digital and other kinds of effects, but a lot of these practical effects are better and hit harder than the computer generated to me. Always has, always will. That's why I love like the 80s for their horror. For most of it was practical effects. They didn't really have the computer AI or anything else involved. It was what can I make and how can I make it. Um, for instance, if I could correct me if I'm wrong, for Tina, they actually used a body bag for her to stand in, and she said
Yes.
she was creeped the hell out. She didn't realize that she was going to have to do that. On top of that, they had what was it, eels or what that were at her feet?
I'm pretty sure they were you.
I think they were because I know they weren't snakes, so they would have had to been eels. She's standing in a body bag to where your whole body, your mind, and everything is telling you you're not supposed to be in this thing, and then has the eels at her feet, and it's all practical. It's not something that they're like, okay, we're going to shoot this and add it in post. It was actually what she did.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason that I am so adamant now about supporting low budget films that get these like wide releases. Like, Good Boy is a great example. I mean, that movie was made for like nothing, next to nothing. I mean, in terms of like Hollywood horror films, like it's an incredible fucking movie. That's why I love films by A24, because they are these like low budget films that like, really like make you laugh. Like, Friendship is like my favorite film of this year. And the reason why is because A, I love Tim Robinson, but also B, like, I just love how creative they were able to get with such a limited budget. Um, and like, think about like other things in terms of modern horror films that have gotten made, or like even ones that we've screened in the past. Whether we talked about like the creativity that they did with Creating Helga Helmet and the look
Hmm.
for her for Hell Squad 2 or The Only Ones by George Miller. We screened also this year at Horrific Coat Film Festival, or even hearing and getting to know kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff of like Jesse Womack, who's a good friend of the show. We've screened a lot of his films in the Perfect Coat past. We've covered a lot of film festivals where his films have also played. Litterbug's a great example of like what you can do in a budget. And I love the fact that filmmakers are creating communities out of these things, and that it's not just we're gonna embrace and see these. It's like no, like let's help and like let's learn, let's grow.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying earlier, with the industry, with the higher budget films and all, a lot of them are just like, some of them are cookie cutter that, oh, well, this worked, let's do this. They're not thinking outside the box. Where when this came out, there wasn't really anything like it. This was different. There was slashers and everything starting out, but it was still different.
Correct. There was, but there wasn't, and that's one of the
Right.
things I think to mind is that at this point, the slasher wasn't this like multifaceted thing that it could be. It was essentially a primarily male figure stalking somebody, eventually killing them, and somehow you end up with a quote unquote final victim. Whether you want to say boy or girl. And Freddy kind of comes along and really changes that because he basically sets up and says, "You are no longer safe within the place that we previously called home," and that's a big one.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the colors earlier of his sweater. Well, how the fact that they used those colors in the setup of the sweater, the stripes for like the person in the hall. And if you look at alternate endings, which this one had like three or four, they were similar, but one of the alternate endings had Freddy driving the car. But the car itself, the roof was painted just like Freddy's sweater, alternating colors, red and green. And just that little thing throughout the movie, when you see it, you reference Freddy, he's not even in frame, not even there, and you still think, oh, where is he at? This is showing that he's there. And that's a way that they showed that it was a dream versus reality. Also, was when you saw his sweaters or the colors, it just showed, hey, they're asleep at this point.
100%. And think it's I think it's a pretty good place to stop for
Yeah,
this episode. I think we've covered quite a lot. But I also think we're starting to beat ourselves. So
yeah.
it's just let's just call it at the end of the day. But you guys can find us. Typically, we use Mark as a way to kind of promote when you guys can hear new episodes. Mark not sure this episode, but we drop episodes every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys can also find us wherever you guys get your podcast from, or follow Victims and Villains wherever you guys get your social media from, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube. Some of those we're not as active on, but Billy, where can people find you?
Everybody can find me at Letterbox at VABoy99.
And I can be found also on Letterbox at Captain Nostalgia. That's CAPT Nostalgia. And until next time, remember, the longer that you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.